Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are immersing ourselves in a highly specific and honestly just utterly fascinating piece of source material.
Oh, it really is. It's a great one today.
Yeah, we are looking at a blog post from qianmeng.org, and this is actually published on March 24th, 2026.
Right. And the author, who goes by Ang, describes himself as an old software plumber.
Which is such a great title.
It is. He spends his time deep in the trenches of free, Libre, and open source software. Flawless.
Right, but the text we're analyzing today isn't really about code at all.
No, not directly.
The post is actually titled, Notes on Fishkeeping Part 216, Managing Dominant Male Golden Mbuna, which is Melanochromis auratus, Aggression.
Quite a mouthful, but our mission today is to explore how that highly analytical software engineering mindset can be directly applied to decode, well, the messy, unpredictable biological drama of a living fish tank.
Yeah, and by reverse engineering Ang's process, we are going to extract some incredibly potent lessons about how you, the listener, can troubleshoot and solve the complex, nonlinear problems in your own life.
Because, when you picture a programmer solving a problem, you usually imagine a very structured, controlled environment.
Right, like a system either compiles and runs, or it throws an error code telling you exactly which line of logic caused the crash.
Exactly. But Ang takes that rigid engineering mindset and drops it into a literal aquarium.
Suddenly, nothing is binary. I mean, he is debugging a wet, chaotic ecosystem where the components have actual minds of their own.
And teeth.
Right. Okay, let's unpack this, because we really need to start right at the scene of the crime here.
The initial setup.
Yeah. Ang sets the stage in his tank, and the tension is just palpable. He has been observing a pair of these Golden Mbuna, and one fish is being hyper-aggressive.
Just completely terrorizing the space.
Yes, while the other fish is just pinned in the corner, basically trying to survive.
So what we're seeing is the ecosystem experiencing a severe resource conflict.
A turf war.
Exactly. In the wild, cichlids like the Golden Mbuna are found in the rocky habitats of Lake Malawi in Africa.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they've evolved to fiercely guard whatever small patch of algae-covered rock they can claim. So what we are looking at isn't just a fish being a bully.
Right.
We are looking at millions of years of evolutionary programming firing off in the enclosed space of a glass box.
It honestly sounds like the ultimate toxic roommate situation to me.
That's actually a pretty good way to look at it.
I mean, imagine an apartment where one person just violently claims the entire living room, the kitchen, and the hallways.
Leaving nothing for the other person.
Exactly. Forcing the other person to essentially barricade themselves in their bedroom, only daring to sneak out when the coast is absolutely clear.
Yeah, that paints a very accurate picture of the behavioral constraints in that tank. The aggressive fish has established absolute dominance over the environment's geography.
But looking at Ang's notes, I have to question his initial deduction here.
Oh.
How so? Well, he immediately identifies the aggressive, dominant roommate as the male and the hiding roommate as the female. However, he explicitly writes that at this specific stage of their development, both of these fish share the exact same physical coloration.
Yes. The dimorphism hasn't kicked in.
Exactly. A casual observer looking through the glass would just see two identical fish. So if there is absolutely no visual difference between them, isn't he jumping to conclusions about their sex?
Well, what's fascinating here is that he isn't relying on visual markers at all.
He's not.
Not even a little. When the source code, which in this case is the physical sexual dimorphism, is hidden or hasn't developed yet, he shifts entirely to behavioral data.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, males of the Golden Mbuna species are biologically hardwired to be aggressively territorial to secure mating grounds. The aggression itself is the identifying marker.
So the action dictates the identity.
Precisely. He deduces the underlying reality purely through active observation of the system's output.
That is such a classic engineering approach.
It really is. If you can't open the black box to see what's inside, you just study how the box interacts with its environment. The behavioral tell gives him the truth when physical appearances offers zero useful data.
That is a brilliant way to bypass missing information.
Yeah.
He observes the function to determine the form.
Exactly. So the diagnostic log now confirms he has one male and one female.
And the immediate next concern in any biological system housing a male and female is, well, reproduction.
Right. He needs to know, have they mated? Are there going to be offspring?
And this is where his methodology moves from behavioral observation to biological deduction, which is super cool.
Because diagnosing a state like mating, especially an event he didn't physically witness, requires a completely different kind of logic. He has to test the current state of the ecosystem.
And his method for testing that state blew my mind because it relies on a very bizarre piece of evolutionary biology.
It's wonderfully weird.
He concludes that no, they have absolutely not mated yet, and his undeniable proof. The female in the corner is still eagerly eating the fish pellets he drops into the water.
Which, to a layperson, seems like a throwaway detail. I mean, fish eat food.
Right, they're fish.
But in the context of the Melanochromis auratus, that single action is the linchpin of his entire diagnostic check.
Because Golden Mbuna are what marine biologists call mouthbrooders.
Yes.
When a female of this species mates, she doesn't just lay her eggs on a leaf and swim away, hoping for the best.
No, she takes a much more active role.
She actually scoops the fertilized eggs up and carries them inside her own mouth, specifically in her buccal cavity, which is like a pouch in her throat.
Yeah, and Ang's post describes how this physiological shift causes a very noticeable bulge in the jawline.
Right, and the mother will constantly make this chewing or tumbling motion to keep the eggs oxygenated.
It is a remarkable survival strategy. I mean, by turning her own body into a mobile incubator, she drastically reduces the chance of predators eating the eggs.
But that evolutionary advantage comes with a massive, compounding physical cost.
She essentially has to starve herself for weeks while she carries them.
And here's where it gets really interesting, because the physical mechanics of this are so extreme.
Oh yeah, it's intense.
It would be like you or me trying to comfortably eat a massive dry club sandwich when our mouths are already stuffed to the brim with fragile glass marbles.
That is a terrifying but very accurate analogy.
It is mechanically impossible to consume food without destroying the eggs. A mouth-brooding female will categorically refuse to eat.
And by understanding the biological absolute, Ang is utilizing a fundamental troubleshooting technique.
Which is?
He is using a simple negative indicator to completely rule out a complex, hidden state.
Wait, so he's relying entirely on the absence of a biological process to confirm her state. Isn't that a massive assumption?
How do you mean?
Like, what if the fish just happens to be hungry today, but she actually is carrying eggs?
Well, biology actually prevents that ambiguity here. The buccal cavity physically obstructs the digestive tract when full.
Oh, wow.
So think of it like a system ping in network engineering.
Okay, I'm with you.
If you want to know the internal state of a remote server, you don't necessarily need to log into it and dig through its files. You send a tiny packet of data, a ping.
Right, just a quick check.
If it accepts and returns the ping, you know the server is active and receptive. In this tank, the fish pellet is the ping.
The pellet is a controlled data input.
Exactly that. He inputs the pellet. The female fish eagerly accepts the input. Therefore, she cannot possibly be in the mouth-brooding state.
That makes total sense.
Consider how you might handle a situation in your own life where you need information from someone, but you don't want to disrupt them.
Like at work or something.
Yeah, say you have a coworker who has been totally silent all morning, and you are worried they are angry with you.
Oh, I've been there.
You could confront them and ask directly, which is invasive and might cause a fight. Or you could send a low-stakes ping.
Like a funny article or a quick question about coffee.
Exactly. If they respond normally, you've just diagnosed that they aren't actively mad at you without ever having to pry open the black box of their mood.
That's so smart. And Ang does the same thing.
He doesn't catch the female with the net. He doesn't pry her jaw open to look for eggs, which would cause immense biological stress.
He just tests the system, and the result gives him a 100% accurate diagnosis of what is not happening.
The pellet is the ping.
That is incredibly elegant. So the system state is fully diagnosed. We have an aggressive male, a stressed female, and 0 offspring currently in development.
But we still have a critical bug in the system.
Right, the male's territorial aggression is turning the tank into a war zone. Diagnosis is only half the battle. Now he actually has to fix the ecosystem.
Troubleshooting the ecosystem requires managing variables, and Ang outlines a highly structured, 3-tiered protocol for mitigating this dominant male aggression.
Okay, let's walk through these solutions because they escalate in a fascinating way. Solution number 1, add more substrate.
Right?
He specifically details introducing more coral rocks and artificial caves to the tank. He basically wants to give the female more places to hide.
Modifying the physical geography is the first line of defense.
Okay, but solution number 2 is where my intuition completely broke down.
This is where it gets a bit counterintuitive for a lot of people.
He says the next step to balance the environment is to acquire more females and introduce them to the population.
Yes.
His reasoning is that this will, to quote the Post, spread out his aggression.
And if that doesn't work?
Right. If neither the caves nor the extra females work, solution number 3 is the nuclear option. Remove the original female entirely and place her in an unused tank or an outdoor pond.
It's a very methodical escalation of interventions.
But I need to push back on solution number 2. Adding more fish to a war zone sounds incredibly counterintuitive.
I can see why you'd say that.
I mean, in human terms, if 2 people are having a violent territorial dispute in a tiny locked room, putting 3 more people into that exact same room doesn't stop the fight.
No, it usually just causes a riot.
Exactly. Doesn't adding more fish just give the bully more targets to terrorize?
If we connect this to the bigger picture and view this specifically through the lens of systems architecture rather than human psychology, it makes perfect logical sense.
Okay, lay it on me.
Let's break down the mechanics of his 3 tiers. Step 1, adding the coral rocks and caves, is a hardware patch.
You are physically altering the server rack.
Yes, and specifically, you are manipulating line of sight. Cichlid aggression is heavily trigger-based.
Meaning, if he sees her, he attacks her.
Exactly. If the male can see the female, he attacks. By adding complex rock formations, you create visual firewalls.
Or visual firewalls.
You block the direct IP connection between the aggressor and the target. But if the hardware patch isn't enough, we move to step 2, adding more females.
This brings us into the realm of load balancing and the principle of dilution, right?
Correct.
But how does dilution actually stop the aggression, though?
Think of the male's aggression like a distributed denial-of-service attack, a DDoS attack on a web server.
Okay.
Right now, 100% of the male's biological bandwidth is focused entirely on one single female. She is a single point of failure, taking the full brunt of the system's hostile traffic.
That sounds exhausting for her.
It is. By introducing more females, you aren't changing the male's total aggression output, but you are rebalancing the system variables.
Because cichlids do not have infinite attention spans.
Exactly. If you put 5 females in the tank, the male is forced to constantly acquire new targets. Any single female is now only taking 20% of the hostile traffic.
Oh, wow.
That massive reduction in continuous stress gives each individual fish time to rest, recover, and utilize the hardware firewalls you built in step 1.
You use the dilution of focus to solve a problem of concentrated stress.
That's the core principle, yes.
Okay, it's not adding bodies to a riot. It's distributing the network traffic so no single server crashes under the load. That completely flips my understanding of aquarium management.
It is pure load balancing. And then, of course, we have step 3, the pond.
The absolute hard reset.
The quarantine protocol. If the hardware firewalls fail and the network load balancing fails, you have an imminent critical failure of a component.
Meaning the female will likely be killed from stress.
Exactly. The only remaining logical step is to cleanly sever the vulnerable node from the hostile environment before it is destroyed. You isolate the component to preserve it.
It is just stunning how perfectly software engineering principles map onto raw biological survival.
It really is beautiful when you step back and look at it.
And as we zoom out from this specific dynamic, from this one male and female Golden Mbuna, we have to look at the larger environment that this post exists within.
Yes, the blog itself.
We have to look at the qianneng.org blog as a whole, because the scale of it tells us so much about the mind of this author.
To truly understand Eng's methodology, we have to examine the metasystem. The archive he has built is staggering in its depth and breadth.
Staggering almost feels like an understatement.
Yeah.
Remember, the title of the specific post we're discussing is Notes on Fishkeeping, Part 216.
216 meticulously logged entries just on fish alone.
And when you look at the sidebars of the site, you see a documentation habit that borders on the superhuman. This archive stretches continuously all the way back to July 2011.
We are talking about over a decade and a half of relentless daily data collection.
And the sheer volume of output is wild. In the years 2024 and 2025 alone, Eng published over 730 posts a year.
Wow.
That is an average of 2 highly detailed posts a day, every single day, without fail.
And the categories, it is this beautiful, chaotic collision of highly abstract software development and deep hands-on naturalism.
The cross-pollination of disciplines there is key. He doesn't compartmentalize his analytical mind.
Exactly. You have notes on Haskell programming, part 90, sitting right next to notes on gardening, part 845.
And for context, Haskell and Erlang, which he also logs extensively, are programming languages known for being strictly functional, stateless, and requiring incredibly rigid logic.
Very rigid.
And he takes that exact same hyper-rigid logic and applies it to tracking his flame dwarf cultivars, his Bougainvillea propagation, his betta spawns, and even notes on dieting, part 116.
He applies the exact same level of scrutiny to free and open source software as he does to observing ram's horn snails.
It is an awe-inspiring volume of rigorous documentation, bridging the digital and the physical.
This raises an important question, though.
What's that?
To a lot of people listening, spending thousands of hours over 15 years logging the exact day a mustard seed sprouted, alongside optimizing a stateless Haskell function, sounds exhausting.
Honestly, yeah.
What is the actual tangible value of this extreme level of personal documentation?
That is the million-dollar question. Because most of us just live our lives. We don't write part 216 about our hobbies. Why do this?
Well, the immense value comes from the fact that Ang isn't just keeping a diary. He is actively applying the core principles of open source software development to his own existence.
Okay, break that down for me.
In the open source community, the golden rule is that you document everything. Every minor change, every bug, every patch is logged with tags and cross-references.
Right, so the broader community can follow along.
Or your future self. It allows anyone to understand the complete historical context of the system.
You are creating a map of your past decisions.
More than a map. You are generating a massive longitudinal data set. Human memory is incredibly faulty.
Oh, totally.
When a normal person's garden dies, they might guess it was because they watered it too much, but Ang isn't guessing.
Because he has the logs.
Exactly. By formatting his logs with strict tags and daily entries across 15 years, he stops seeing isolated, frustrating incidents and starts seeing underlying mechanical truths.
Wow.
He can look back and realize on day 42, the ambient temperature dropped by 5 degrees, which coincided with a pH shift in the soil, which stunted the flame dwarf cultivars.
He can literally debug his own life.
His life, his environment, and his habits with ultimate clarity, because he has the raw data to prove definitively what works and what fails.
He is entirely replacing human assumption with empirical observation.
A huge shift in perspective.
It is the difference between feeling like the universe is out to get you when things go wrong and knowing that you just have an unpatched bug in your local environment.
It is incredibly empowering when you frame it like that.
It really is. So we started our journey today with a single, highly aggressive fish terrorizing a tank.
We did.
We saw how Ang used pure behavioral observation to deduce the sex of the fish when visual cues were useless.
And we learned how a simple input test, the eager eating of a pellet acting as a system ping, definitively ruled out the complex biological state of a mouthful of eggs.
Right. We then explored a masterclass in systemic troubleshooting, patching the hardware with line-of-sight firewalls.
Load balancing the biological stress by introducing more females to dilute the aggression.
And keeping the hard quarantine of the pond as an ultimate failsafe.
And all of these insights were brought to us by a man who treats his daily life with the profound rigor of a lifelong open source project.
Publishing hundreds of posts a year to build an empirical database of his own existence.
It's truly inspiring.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? Why should you spend your time caring about the territorial habits of a cichlid or the daily blog archive of a software plumber?
Because right now, today, you have complex, messy ecosystems in your own life that feel completely out of balance.
Maybe you are preparing for a massive cross-departmental meeting where the office politics feel exactly like a war zone.
Or maybe you are trying to learn a dense, intimidating new field and you feel like you are just hiding in the corner of the tank hoping not to get attacked.
The core lesson Ang teaches us is that chaos is very often just a system that hasn't been properly documented yet.
Yes. When you feel overwhelmed by a situation, your natural human instinct is to react emotionally. You feel stressed, so you panic or retreat.
But the software plumber teaches us to react analytically. Stop guessing at people's motivations and start looking for the behavioral tells.
What is the actual observable data showing you?
When you are unsure where you stand with a client or a friend, can you run a simple ping test, a negative indicator, to rule out your own anxieties?
And when a project is crushing you, can you load balance your stress by diluting the pressure across a wider network of colleagues?
Rigorous observation and the willingness to document what you see can turn an overwhelming emotional drama into a perfectly solvable system.
I will leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over today.
Let's hear it.
We look at an archive featuring part 216 of Fishkeeping and part 845 of Gardening, and we marvel at the sheer dedication of it. But imagine, just for a moment, if you actually committed to doing that.
Wow, okay.
If you treated your own daily recurring frustrations, a difficult workflow at your job, a failing houseplant, or even a cyclical argument with a partner, with the detached, curious, and rigorous daily logging of an open-source software plumber.
What invisible, life-changing patterns in your own world would you finally start to see?